Good morning, all of you. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss about United Nations and its prominent organs. So basically, we will be entirely discussing about how United Nations was created, what was the purpose of forming United Nations organizations, and what are its prominent six organs, and what are the roles and responsibilities that have been assigned to each and every organ in detail. So let's start with the same. Now, basically, we need to understand is that the United Nations is an organization of sovereign states which voluntarily joined the UN to work for the world peace. It formally came into being on October 24th, 1945. So what happened at that point of time is that we all know that there was a failure of League of Nations, and there was the destruction, the devastation caused by Second World War. And it specifically disturbed n number of countries at that point of time. At one hand, there was a failure of League of Nations as a successful organization, and at the other hand, there was n number of destruction that was caused by Second World War. So there was an expressed desire to establish peace, and even when the war was in progress. So in order to achieve this particular thing, many efforts to create an international organization began at that point of time in the year 1941 itself. So deliberations became intense after the termination of the war, which resulted in the creation of UN on 24th October 1945. So it was basically, it is said that UNO is formed on the ashes of war that brought the war which actually brought a lot of sorrow to the mankind. So basically it came into existence on October 24th, 1945, and at that time, at the time of its formation, it had 51 countries as member. Now, currently, 193 countries are the members of UN, and most recent to join was South Sudan uh, in the year 2011 and in the month of July. So basically, what happened after the separation of Sudan from South Sudan, South Sudan became the latest member of UN, which recently joined UN in the year 2011. So UN is a forum, a meeting place for virtually all the nations of the world. So it is basically a meeting place for all the nations in the world. It provides them with the mechanism to help to find solutions to disputes or problems, and to act on virtually any matter of concern of humanity. Now, sometimes UN is also described as Parliament of Nations. The United Nations is basically neither a supra state nor a government of government. It does not have any army, nor does it imposes taxes. It depends on the political will of the members to have its decision implemented, and relies on the contributions of its members to carry out its activity. So basically, when we talk about United Nations as an organization, we cannot say that it is a supranational organization like a federal government. It has never been the case. So basically, the reality is that the UN is an association of independent states and can only do what its members are prepared to have it to do. So basically, it cannot do anything on its own. If the member states are agreeing to do something together, they can do it, otherwise they cannot do it. So basically, it is an organization, and it is an organization for the cooperation among the states, voluntarily created by them to achieve certain common ends by their united strength. So there are certain common ends which the countries need to achieve, and basically for that matter, states have voluntarily created this particular organization. Now, the UN Charter is a multilateral treaty. Primarily, it is known as a multilateral treaty, and its binding force is based on the consent of the states, and can only do what its members are prepared to have it to do. So basically, it is an organization for cooperation among the states, voluntarily created by them to achieve certain common ends by their united strength. So you cannot say that though it has been described by the word Parliament of Nations, but you cannot say that it is a supranational organization or something like that. Basically, it is an organization which has been created for cooperation among the member states to achieve certain common ends. So this is what is the meaning of United Nations organization. Now, it actually plays a central role in reducing international tensions, preventing conflicts, and putting an end to fighting already underway. Now, it deals with our environment, outer space, seabed, Now, it has helped wipe out many diseases and expand food production. It cares for and protects refugees, expands literacy, and responds quickly to natural disasters. It also protects and promotes rights of the individuals by setting a global standard for human rights. So, each and every aspect which is of global importance and which promotes international peace and security, all those aspects are precisely covered by the United Nations organization. Now, talking about the six main organs of the UN's, why United Nations organization has been divided into six different organs and what are the roles and responsibilities of these organs individually, we are now going to discuss about the same. So the first and the foremost important organ of United Nations is the General Assembly. The second one is the Security Council. The third one is Trusteeship Council. The fourth one is Economic and Social Council. The fifth one is International Court of Justice. And the sixth one is Secretariat. So we will be discussing each and every organ of UN in detail, starting with the General Assembly. Now, talking about General Assembly. So General Assembly is the deliberative organ of UN comprised of all the member states, each of which has one vote no matter of its size or influence. So basically, whenever we talk about General Assembly, we have to say that it is a chief deliberative and policy making body of United Nations. So the main policy making body of United Nations is General Assembly, and we need to remember one thing, that it is comprised of all the member states and each member state has one vote no matter of its size or its influence. Now, General Assembly may discuss any matter arising under the UN Charter. So it has the power to discuss each and every matter which is arising under the UN Charter. Now, decisions on international peace and security, admission of new member states, and UN budget are decided by a two-third of majority. So basically, there are certain decisions like international peace and security, admission of new member states, and the UN budget. These are precisely decided by two-third majority, and the other matters are decided by a simple majority. So it depends that it there's a classification that whenever there's a decision on international peace and security or admission of a new member state or UN budget, so it is mostly decided by two-third of majority, and the rest of the matters, they are decided by a simple majority. Now, recently, there have been some special efforts made to reach decisions through consensus, but rather than a formal voting system. But there have been some efforts, but in the recent years, to specifically um reach to certain decisions through consensus, but by far now it has not been possible. So it has been tried a lot many times, but efforts have been made for the same, but it has not been successful by far. Now, General Assembly resolutions are only recommendations to the member state. Please keep this in your mind, that the resolutions which are passed by the General Assembly are just recommendations to the member states, but they represent the majority of world's view. So basically, if they are representing the majority of world's view, they carry a heavy moral weight and often lead countries to join international agreements called treaties, conventions, protocols, and ultimately they have a positive influence in the world. So basically, when we talk about the resolutions passed by the General Assembly, we need to understand that these resolutions are recommendatory in nature, but since they represent the majority of the world's view, so they carry a very heavy moral weight and often lead the countries to join international agreements called treaties, conventions, protocols, and ultimately they have a very positive influence in the world. So the every year the session of the assembly starts in the mid September, which is the busiest session, and during which time most of the resolutions are adopted is from September to December. So we need to understand this thing, that the session of the General Assembly starts every year mid in the mid September, which is the busiest session, and at the time when most of the resolutions are adopted is from the period to from September to December. So most of the resolutions are adopted in between September to December, and the session is beginning at mid September every year. Now, special sessions may be requested by the assembly at the request of Security Council or at the request of majority of UN members. So there can, apart from this particular session, there also can be special sessions that might be requested by the assembly itself, itself, or at the request of the Security Council, or at the request of the majority of the UN members. So it depends that they want to hold special sessions or not. Now at the beginning of every regular session in September, what happens is that assembly holds a 2-week general debate at which head of the state present their views on wide range of issues of concern to the international community, from war and terrorism to disease and poverty. Each and every representative belonging to different states, they get a chance to participate in this 2-week general debate. And under this particular thing, what they do is that they present their views on n number of issues of global concern, like war, terrorism, disease and poverty. Now General Assembly also elects a president who presides over these meetings as a neutral party that represents the United Nations. So basically, every year, the General Assembly also elects a president who presides over the meetings as a neutral party, and they represent the United Nations. The work of the Assembly is also carried out by its 6 main committees. So we need to keep this particular thing in mind, that General Assembly comprises of 6 main committees, and apart from these 6 main committees, there's a Human Rights Council, other subsidiary bodies, and UN Secretariat. So the 6 main committees of General Assembly are, the first one is disarmament and international security, the second one is economic and financial, the third committee is social, humanitarian and cultural, the fourth committee is special, political and decolonization, the fifth one is administrative and budgetary, and the sixth one is legal. So basically, these 6 committees, they help in the day-to-day working of the General Assembly. And apart from this, the Human Rights Council and the other subsidiary bodies of the UN Secretariat, they also help in the day-to-day working of the General Assembly. So basically, we need to remember these points, that it is the main deliberative organ, which means it is the main policy making body of United Nations. It comprises of all the member states of UN, and each member has one vote, no matter of its size or influence. Now it can discuss any matter which is arising under the UN Charter. Now there are decisions on international peace and security, admission of new member states, and UN budget that necessarily needs to be decided by a 2/3 of majority, and other matters are decided by simple majority. Now the next thing which you need to understand is that the resolutions which you need to remember is that the resolutions that are passed by General Assembly are recommendatory in nature, but they represent the majority of world's view. They carry a very heavy moral weightage and often lead countries to join international agreements called treaties, conventions. Apart from these points, you need to remember that every year the session starts in the mid-September, and the busiest session is from September to December. During this session, n number of resolutions are adopted. Every year, a president is also elected in General Assembly, who presides over these particular meetings. There's a 2-week long debate also, where each and every representative of belonging to any state gets a chance to present their views on issues relating to global concern like war, terrorism, disease and poverty. And apart from this, are 6 main committees of United Nations General Assembly that helps in its day-to-day working. Apart from that, Human Rights Council and other subsidiary bodies of the UN Secretariat, they also help in the working of General Assembly. So all these are very important points which you need to understand and remember about the United Nations General Assembly. This was the first organ which we discussed about UN. The second one is Security Council. Now, the Security Council has a primary responsibility under the UN Charter to maintain international peace and security. So the primary responsibility under the UN Charter has to maintain international peace and security. Whenever you come across these two terminologies, maintenance of international peace and security, so one thing that should click in your mind is that this is the whole and sole responsibility of the Security Council to maintain international peace and security. So unlike General Assembly, the Security Council does not hold regular meetings. It can be convened at any point of time whenever international peace is threatened. So you cannot basically in it meets almost every day, because a very important responsibility of maintenance of international peace and security has been given to the Security Council. So it does not hold regular meetings. It can be convened at any point of time whenever it is felt that now there is a threat to international peace and security, and in fact it meets almost every day. So and the next thing which you need to understand about Security Council is that the member states are obligated to carry out its decisions which are legally binding. So the member states are have an obligation to carry out the decisions of the Security Councils which are legally binding. Whenever there is a threat to peace and it is brought before the Security Council, it usually first asks the parties to reach agreement by peaceful means. If the fighting breaks out, the council tries to secure a ceasefire through a negotiation, the establishment of sanctions, or by authorizing the use of force carried out by willing member states. Now, the council may also decide to establish peacekeeping operations to promote lasting peace. So, there are a number of peacekeeping operations that are conducted by the Security Council, and it is basically conducted for the promotion of peace. So council has 15 members, which you need to remember always, that the Security Council has been comprised of 15 members, including the 5 permanent members. And who are these 5 permanent members? China, France, Russian Federation, UK and US. So basically these are the 5 permanent members of the United Nations organization, and apart from these 5 permanent members, there are 10 other countries, 10 other countries as the member of Security Council. So in total the council has 15 members. So why are these 5 nations granted the permanent membership of Security Council? Because at the end of World War II, these 5 countries played key roles in the establishment of United Nations, and hence they were granted the permanent membership in United Nations. So I'm again repeating that these 5 nations are China, France, Russian Federation, United Kingdom and United States. Now, the creators of the UN Charter conceived that they would continue to play important roles in the maintenance of international peace and security. The other 10 rotating members are elected by the General Assembly on the basis of geographical representation for a term of 2 years. So basically, the other 10 members are the rotating members. They are elected by the General Assembly of the United Nations and on the basis of geographical representation for a term of 2 years. So to pass a resolution in Security Council, 9 out of 15 members of the council must vote yes. So basically whenever there's a resolution brought about in the Security Council and it needs to be passed, necessarily 9 out of the 15 members of the council must vote yes. But if in case any of the 5 permanent members votes no, often referred as a veto, the resolution does not pass. So I have already discussed what is a veto power and how these 5 countries exercise their power of veto. So basically it means that if there even if there is majority, 9 out of 15 members of the council have voted yes, but if any among these 5 permanent members, if they vote no, then the resolution will not be passed, and this particular concept is known as a veto power. So this veto power has been granted to these 5 permanent members, which we discussed in the previous slide. Which is China, France, Russia, UK, and US. They are having veto power, and even if there is a majority to pass a resolution, and any of these permanent members they vote no, then in that context the resolution cannot be passed, and this is known as the concept of veto power. Now, the council also makes recommendations to the General Assembly on the appointment of a new Secretary General and on the admission of the members to UN. Now, many countries want to expand the membership of council to include new permanent and non-permanent members, but these are just proposals and they are currently being discussed by the member states of the United Nations. So Council also has the power to make recommendations to the General Assembly on appointment of new member states, and also on the appointment of Secretary General, admission of new member states. Now, many countries have time and again proposed that there should be an expansion in the membership of the council, and it should also include new permanent and non-permanent members. But these are right now just proposals which have been discussed, but there is has been no as such progress in this particular aspect. So this is all about Security Council, which you need to remember. So whenever you come across the words maintenance of international peace and security, something which should click in your mind is that the Security Council has the whole and sole responsibility of maintenance of international peace and security, and in fact it meets almost every day. There are no special sessions of Security Council. Whenever it is felt that there's a threat to international peace and security, at that point of time Security Council can meet. Now, you also need to remember that the member states are obligated to carry the decisions of Security Council, which are legally binding, and the council indulges itself in formulating a number of peacekeeping operations to promote the lasting peace. And a very important thing that the council has 15 members, 5 are the permanent ones, and the 10 are rotating members who are elected by General Assembly on the basis of geographical representation for a term of 2 years. So these are the highlighting points of Security Council, which you need to keep in your mind always, and also the concept of veto power. So this is about Security Council. I hope General Assembly and Security Council is clear to all of you. Now we will proceed towards Economic and Social Council, which is also known as ECOSOC. So the Economic and Social Council is the central body for coordinating the economic and social work of the UN and the UN system. So the body which is centrally responsible for the coordination of all the economic and social work which is carried out by United Nations and the UN system is Economic and Social Council. It has 54 members which are chosen for equal geographical representation and serve for a 3-year term. So basically the entire economic and social work of UN has been is carried out by the Economic and Social Council. It has 54 members and who are chosen for equal geographical representation for a term, for a 3-year term. So voting in council is by simple majority. Each and every member has one vote, and as much as 70% of the work of UN system is devoted to promoting higher standards of living, full employment, conditions of economic and social progress and development, and all these work, this entire work is coordinated by Economic and Social Council. So this is very important to understand that the ECOSOC is that particular body which is responsible for conducting the economic as well as the social work of United Nations. So the membership needs to be remembered that there are 54 members chosen for equal geographical representation for a term of 3 years, and 70% of the work of UN system is devoted in promoting higher standards of living, full employment, conditions of economic and social progress and development. Now, the council recommends and directs activities aimed at promoting economic growth to the developing countries, supporting human rights, fostering world cooperation to fight poverty and underdevelopment. So it also has a recommendatory work, and it directs activities which can help the developing country to boost their economies. This council also supports human rights, fostering world cooperation, helps in fighting poverty and underdevelopment. So basically, to meet the specific needs, the General Assembly has set up an n number of specialized agencies like Food and Agriculture Organization, which is popularly known as FAO, the World Health Organization WHO, the UN Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization UNESCO, and programs such as UN Development Program, UNDP, UNICEF, UNHCR. So these specialized agencies, the work of these specialized agencies and the programs are entirely coordinated by Economic and Social Council, which is very important thing to remember. So there are some specialized agencies which have been set up by the General Assembly to meet specific needs. These are WHO, FAO, UNESCO, UNDP, UNICEF, and n number of other organizations. Now the work of all these agencies that have been created and set up by General Assembly, and the programs of all these agencies is coordinated by Economic and Social Council. So now we understand that Economic and Social Council, it plays a very important role in coordination of work of these specialized agencies, as well as recommending the activities that will help the developing countries to boost their economies in support of human rights, fostering world cooperation, fight poverty and underdevelopment. And apart from this, you always need to remember that the central body for the coordination of economic and social work in UN is Economic and Social Council. It has 54 members having one vote each, and 70% of the work of United Nations is devoted to promoting higher standards of living, full employment, conditions of economic and social progress and development, and things like that. So this is the work that is carried out by the Economic and Social Council as an organ of UN. So this was the third we discussed by far. I hope you are now clear with what was the function of General Assembly, what was the functions of Security Council, and what were the roles and responsibilities that have been assigned to Economic and Social Council as the organs of United Nations. Now, there's the fourth one is the Trusteeship Council. Now, what is the Trusteeship Council? Trusteeship Council was assigned under the UN Charter to supervise the administration of 11 trust territories, former colonies or dependent territories, which were placed under the international trusteeship system. Now, the system was created at the end of World War II to promote the advancement of the inhabitants of those dependent territories and their progressive development towards self-governance or independence. Since the creation of Trusteeship Council, more than 70 colonial territories, including all the 11 trust territories, have attained independence with the help of United Nations. Now, firstly, we need to understand what a Trusteeship Council is, what are the functions of Trusteeship Council, why was this particular council formulated, what was the purpose of this council. See, first time the mandate system was introduced under the League of Nations to improve the well-being of the people of the colonies and dependent territories. The system, however, that particular system came to an end with the dissolution of the League of Nations. Now, when UN was established, the mandate system was introduced in the name of trusteeship system, and therefore trusteeship system may be called as the successor of the mandate system. Now, while the principles of both these mandate and trusteeship system are essentially same, they differ in organization and functions. So basically, the objective of Trusteeship Council, what were the major objectives of Trusteeship Council? It was basically, it has been incorporated under Article 76 of the UN Charter, and it lays down the objectives of the Trusteeship Council. So basically, what is the role of Trusteeship Council? That after the devastation which was caused by World War II, there were n number of dependent territories, n number of trust territories, and all the main function of this particular council was to promote and to promote the advancement of the inhabitants of those dependent territories and lead them towards progressive development and towards self-governance and independence once again. So this council plays a very vital role in the advancement of the inhabitants of the dependent territories, their progressive development towards self-governance and independence. Now, since this particular council was created, more than 70 colonial territories, including all the 11 trust territories, they have attained independence with the help of the United Nations. So we can prominently understand that how Trusteeship Council has helped the dependent nations to become progressive and develop again towards self-governance and become independent once again. So this council played a very vital role. Now, the last trust territory to become independent was Palau in 1994, and as a result, the council decided formally to suspend suspend its operation and to meet as and when occasion might require. So presently the functions of this particular council has been suspended, and it was held that whenever required, we will make this particular council again operative. But as of now, this particular council is not operative, but the function of this particular council was to make the dependent nations independent once again, to help them to provide them with economic aid and advice, and to make the inhabitants living over there dependent again, lead them towards progressive development, self-governance, and independence. Now, the Trusteeship Council is comprised of the permanent members of Security Council. So, as we have already discussed, that there are permanent members of the Security Council. They are China, France, Russian Federation, United Kingdom, and United States. So, the membership of Trusteeship Council is limited to the permanent members of Security Council, and each member has one vote. Decisions are made by a simple majority. So basically this was all about the Trusteeship Council, which the things which you need to remember is that this council was assigned under the UN Charter to supervise the administration of 11 trust territories, the former colonies or the dependent territories which were placed under the international trusteeship system. And in international relation, for the very first time, a mandate system was introduced under the League of Nations to improve the well-being of the people and colonies and dependent territories. However, this particular mandate system was not successful, because after the League of Nations was dissolved, this mandate system also got dissolved, and on the basis of this mandate system, a trusteeship council was formed when United Nations organization came into force. And after this trusteeship council was formed, it helped n number of dependent nations to become independent once again. And the membership which you need to remember under trusteeship council is that it is comprised of 5 permanent members, that is China, France, Russian Federation, United Kingdom, and United States. So basically each and every member has one vote, and the decisions are made by a simple majority. So this was all about trusteeship council, which you need to remember and understand. Now the last organ which we need to discuss under the United Nations organization is International Court of Justice. So basically the International Court of Justice is the UN's main judicial organ, which is located in the Hague, Netherlands, and it was also established in the year 1945. ICJ is often referred as a world code, and it assumed its function in the year 1946. So the court settles all the legal disputes between the nations and not between the individuals, in accordance with the international law. So if a country does not wishes to take part in the proceeding, it does not have to do so unless required by a special treaty provision. Once a country accepts the court's jurisdiction, it must comply with its decision. Now, since ICJ has assumed its functions in the year 1946, the International Court of Justice has considered over more than 150 cases and issued n number of judgments on international disputes brought to it by states involving economic rights, environmental protection, rights of passage, non-use of force, non-interference in the internal affairs of the state, diplomatic relations, hostage taking, the right of asylum and nationality. So there are n number of issues relating issues between the countries, and all these types of issues have been discussed and considered by the International Court of Justice since it has assumed its functions. Now, it has also issued a number of advisory opinions in response to requests by range of United Nations organizations. So all the judgments passed by the courts are final and without any appeal. So it is basically presided over by 15 judges who are elected for a period of 9 years. So the tenure of all these 15 judges will be 9 years, and each from different nations. So each and every judge needs to be specifically from different nation, and both by General Assembly and Security Council. So basically no two judges can be from the same nation, which you need to keep in your mind. And the elections take place every 3 years for 1/3 of the seats, and the retiring judges may be re-elected. So there is a procedure, there is a concept of re-election for the retiring judges. No two judges can be from the same country, which you need to keep that in your mind. And elections take place every 3 years for 1/3 of the seats. Now it is presided over by 15 judges who are elected for a 9 year of term, and they all belong to different nations. Now the members of the court, they do not represent their governments but are independent magistrates. So they are not representing their governments, they are independent magistrate. It takes a majority of 9 judges to make any decision in International Court of Justice, and the seat of International Court of Justice is at Hague in Netherlands. Now, one more thing which you need to understand and remember is that the offices of the court occupied the Peace Palace, which was constructed by Carnegie Foundation, a private non-profit organization, to serve as the headquarters of the Permanent Court of International Justice, the predecessor of the present court. Now, the UN makes an annual contribution to the foundation for the use of building. So basically, these are the important facts which you need to remember about International Court of Justice. When did it assumed its functions, how many judges preside over International Court of Justice, for what is the tenure of their election, are they eligible for re-election or not, and where basically this particular court is situated. So it has by far issued n number of judgments, and it has also issued advisory opinions in response to the request by the range of United Nations organizations. So the next organization which we need to discuss is the Secretariat, the UN Secretariat. Now, the Secretariat is made up of an international staff working at UN headquarters in New York, as well as UN offices in Geneva, Vienna, Nairobi, and other locations. So basically, Secretariat is made up of an international staff who are working at UN headquarters in New York, and there are other UN offices also, like in Geneva, Vienna, and other locations wherever it is required. So basically, whenever you come across to study about UN Secretariat, you need to keep this particular thing in your mind, that the entire administrative and the clerical work of United Nations has been handed over to the UN Secretariat. So the entire administrative and day-to-day working of United Nations is carried out by the Secretariat as an organization of United Nations. Now, it consists of departments and offices with a total staff of 16,000 drawn from most member states. They carry out the day-to-day work of the organization. So there are departments and offices with a total staff of 16,000. They are drawn from different member states that carry the day-to-day work of the United Nations organization. Their duties are varied as the problems dealt with by the United Nations. They range from administering peacekeeping operations, mediating international disputes, surveying social and economic trends, laying the groundwork for international agreement, to organizing international conferences. Now, the Secretariat is responsible for servicing the other organs of UN and administering the programs and policies laid down by them. So this is very important, that apart from performing their day-to-day duties like peacekeeping operation, mediating international disputes, surveying social and economic trends, they also are responsible for servicing the other organs of United Nations and administering the programs and policies laid down by the other organs of United Nations. So we need to understand that the Secretariat, the UN Secretariat, plays a very prominent role in the entire administrative work of United Nations. They also service other organs, and apart from this, they administer their programs and policies, and apart from this, they administer peacekeeping operations, mediate international disputes, survey on social and economic trends, and n number of other works. And what you also need to remember is that there is a total staff of 16,000 who are drawn from most of the member states. Now, a very important fact which we all need to remember is that the Secretariat is headed by Secretary General, who is appointed by General Assembly on recommendation of Security Council for a 5-year term, and is responsible for implementing decisions taken by various organs of the United Nations. So the Secretariat, the head of the Secretariat is Secretary General, who is appointed by the General Assembly on recommendation of Security Council. So basically, he is the head of this particular organization, Secretariat, the Secretary General, and he is appointed by General Assembly on recommendation of Security Council for a period of 5-year term, and he is responsible for implementation of all the decisions that are taken by the various organs of United Nations. Now he is also known as a chief administrative officer of the organization. The secretary general is also known as the chief administrative officer of the organization, and the secretary general, he directs the work of staff known as international civil servants. So the entire staff, the entire working staff of the UN Secretariat are known as international civil servants. They are not diplomats. They do not represent a particular country and the interest of that particular country. The international civil servants work for all the 193 member states, and they take their orders not from governments but from the secretary general. So basically, the reason why they are called international civil servants is that they are not like diplomats. They are not representing any particular country and the interest of that country. They are international civil servants because they work for all the 193 member states, and they take their orders not from the governments but from the secretary general itself. So they are independent from political and other forms of interference and place the interest of the organization above their own. Now the secretary general may bring the attention of the Security Council in any matter which in his opinion may threaten the international peace and security. He can use his good offices to prevent conflicts or promote peaceful settlements of dispute between the countries. So basically, what we need to understand is that the UN Secretary General plays a very prominent role. He is appointed by General Assembly on recommendation of Security Council, and that too for a term of 5 period. He is responsible for implementing all the decisions which are taken by various organs of United Nations. He is also known as Chief Administrative Officer, and the entire working staff of the Secretariat is known as International Civil Servants because they are representing the interest of 193 member states of UN. So basically, they are not they are free from all the political influences and interferences, and basically they place the interest of the organization before their own interests. So secretary general can also bring attention of Security Council any matter which in his opinion he thinks that may threaten the international peace and security. He can use his good offices to prevent the conflicts or promote peaceful settlement of disputes between the countries. Now the secretary general may also act on his own initiative to deal with humanitarian and other problems of special importance. So basically, all these things which you need to remember about the secretariat, these are very important. You need to remember the important points about secretary general, that he is the chief administrative officer of the organization, and apart from that, the entire staff of the UN, they are known as international civil servants. They are more than approximately 16,000 members who are drawn from different member states, and their duties and problems are dealt on a day-to-day basis by United Nations. They indulge themselves into n number of operations like peacekeeping operations, mediation of international disputes, surveying the social and economic trends, and they are not like diplomats. They are representing the interest of all the 193 member state. So these are the important points which you need to understand and remember about the UN Secretariat. Now we are done with all the 6 organs of the United Nations. The first one was General Assembly, the second one was Security Council, the third one was Economic and Social Council, the fourth one was Trusteeship Council, the fifth one was International Court of Justice, and the sixth one was UN Secretariat. I hope all these the roles and responsibilities of all these organs are clear to you. If there is any confusion, you can drop a message on the group, and you can also ask it to me personally. Thank you for attending today's lecture.